Good evening, I'm Ginella Massa with breaking news out of Ottawa. We learned just a short time ago that a man has died after an incident involving police. It's one of two deaths that we're following tonight as we probe the transparency of the province's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit.
Taken down, completely bashed in the head with a baton. That's it.
This video taken by a witness in Ottawa appears to show a man laying unconscious as paramedics perform CPR. He later died in hospital. According to published reports, this is the aftermath after neighbors saw him beaten with a baton and pepper sprayed by police Sunday morning. Yet none of that is mentioned in the Special Investigation Unit's press release, which only says a man suffered medical distress. He suffered medical distress during a confrontation with police. What exactly transpired there?
Again, that's something that we are working to determine.
The SIU's report says that Mr. Abdi experienced medical distress. No, Mr. Abdirahman was beaten severely by the Ottawa police, and there is a huge problem with the fact that the SIU cannot say that they cannot even say who applied the force to this man.
Journalist and activist Desmond Cold says it's a pattern when it comes to the province's watchdog, tasked with investigating incidents where civilians are seriously hurt or injured during interactions with police. A second incident involving officers in Toronto just hours earlier ended with one man dead and a woman with serious injuries. But the SIU won't say exactly what happened or who fired the gun. Were they shot by police?
That is something that's currently part of the investigation and something I couldn't talk to at this moment.
Do we know if either of those people had weapons?
Also something that's currently part of the investigation and not something that we'd be able to speak to at this moment.
It seems to me when there are incidents involving police, there's less information given than in any other crime where police are attending.
So as I mentioned earlier, we endeavor to give as much information as possible, and we do give as much information as possible based on what we can confirm at that time.
Cole says he wants to see the SIU make all reports public, but until that time, he says it isn't unreasonable for the SIU to release basic information.
Someone was shot and killed in a residential area, okay? So I would think that people would want to know basic questions like, is the person who did the shooting and killing still at large? If it takes the SIU months or more than a year to determine the basic facts of a case where the police have harmed a civilian, then they are not equipped to do their job, which is police oversight and accountability. It is completely unacceptable that the SIU takes this long to give us answers.
Now, that victim in Ottawa has been identified by his family as Abdirahman Abdi, a 37-year-old originally from Somalia. He is also believed to be on the autism spectrum.
Should the right to remain silent not apply to police?
Officers who might have been involved in hurting or killing a civilian, they never have to talk to the SIU. That's actually part of the rules.
Why critics claim the system is not serving those it's sworn to protect.
This is a very poor process in terms of accountability.
I'm Ginella Massa. As we told you earlier, Ontario's provincial police watchdog is currently probing two separate incidents from this weekend where two men have died. In one, in Ottawa, witnesses say a man was hit in the head with a baton by police. And the other here in Toronto, a man was shot. Now, there have been criticisms about the slow release of information from the SIU, but part of the reason that details aren't publicized is that the officers who are involved aren't required to give statements to the SIU.
It would be irresponsible for the SIU to make public statements about what happened and what transpired before an investigation is completed, before we could say with absolute certainty what we think happened.
It shouldn't take them that long unless perhaps the police are not cooperating with the SIU when they arrive and the police are not telling the SIU exactly what happened, which is what I fear.
Okay, when you talk about what you can confirm, are subject officers who are involved, are they required to give statements?
Subject officers are not required to give statements to the SIU. Subject officers are considered or would be the equivalent of suspects in a criminal investigation. So under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they have the right against self-incrimination. So as part of that, they do not have to speak to the SIU and do not have to provide the SIU with a copy of their duty notes. Unlike subject officers, witness officers, under the law, under the Police Services Act, are compelled to cooperate with the Special Investigations Unit and must submit to interviews.
The person who inflicted the harm, presumably, does not have to say anything. Witness officers are interviewed, that's other officers who were present, but sometimes that can take weeks for them to even be called in, which gives them an opportunity to speak to one another, to speak to lawyers, gives them an opportunity to get a similar story. This is a very, very poor process in terms of accountability.
You mentioned that part of what the SIU does is to instill public confidence, so I'm sure you can understand that that might have the opposite effect when police aren't required to give statements to the SIU.
We follow the law. The legislation says that witness officers are compelled to provide statements, to submit to interviews, and also to provide us with a copy of their duty notes. But subject officers, like any other Canadian citizen under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, has that right to protect themselves against self-incrimination.
Do you think that the process is correct, that it's fair? Do you believe that the process is doing its job correctly?
Justice Tulloch is undertaking a review of the SIU right now, and as such, I wouldn't comment on that.
Now we're learning this hour that the family of the man who died in Ottawa was told by doctors that he was deceased 45 minutes before he even arrived in hospital yesterday.